A long, long time ago, before there were cities, before there were airplanes or oceans filled with ships, even before there were stars shining in the night sky, there was only God. He was there, peaceful and eternal. And one day, in the stillness of forever, he decided to create. With his voice as calm as a breeze, he spoke light into the darkness. "Let there be light," he whispered. And just like that, the darkness faded and light came rushing in, soft and warm. It was the first morning of the world. Day by day, God shaped everything, clouds to dance in the sky, oceans to roll and sparkle, trees to sway in the wind, birds to sing, and animals to roam. He made the sun to shine by day and the moon to glow by night. And when all of it was ready, when the earth was gentle and green, God saved the most special part of his creation for last. From the dust of the quiet ground, he formed a man. He shaped his hands, his feet, and his smile. And then, with loving care, God leaned close and breathed life into him. The man's chest rose with breath, and his eyes fluttered open. His name was Adam. And Adam's first sight was God's world, bright, blooming, and full of wonder. God smiled, pleased with his work, and placed Adam in a garden unlike any other. It was called Eden. The Garden of Eden was filled with tall trees and colorful flowers that never wilted. Rivers flowed gently across the soft earth. Fruit hung sweet and ripe from every branch. Animals walked beside Adam like old friends. Lions napped near the deer, and birds sang lullabies in the trees. In this peaceful paradise, God gave Adam a gentle job: to take care of the garden, name the animals, and enjoy everything. But still, something was missing. Though the garden was perfect, and though God walked with Adam in the cool of the evening, Adam felt a quiet ache in his heart, a loneliness he couldn't name. God saw this and said kindly, "It is not good for man to be alone." So one night, as Adam slept under the stars, God took a rib from his side, and from it, he made someone new. She was beautiful, with eyes like shining water and laughter that made the trees sway. Her name was Eve. When Adam saw her, he smiled wide. "At last," he said gently, "this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." And in that quiet moment, the garden was truly complete. Adam and Eve lived peacefully in Eden. They walked, hand in hand, through tall grasses, plucked fruit from trees without thorns, and talked with God like a dear friend. There was no pain, no sadness, no fear, only peace, only joy. But in the middle of the garden, beneath the branches of a special tree, God had given them a rule. Just one. "You may eat from every tree in this garden," he said, "except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you eat from it, you will surely die." It was a simple boundary in a world of freedom. And Adam and Eve understood. The tree stood in the center of Eden, its fruit shining in the sunlight. But they did not touch it. They had so much, and it was enough. Time passed gently, like a soft breeze. The garden sang its songs. Nights were filled with stars. Days were filled with warmth. And Adam and Eve rested in the goodness of it all. They had no idea that one day a voice would whisper through the leaves, a voice as smooth as silk and cold as night, a voice that would change everything. But that story is for another night. For now, let your heart be still, like Eden in the evening. Close your eyes and rest, knowing that the one who made the stars and the trees also made you, carefully, wonderfully, and with love. Good night, dear one. Tomorrow we'll walk again in the garden. When you close your eyes and imagine a perfect place, what do you see? Perhaps it's a quiet field with soft grass beneath your feet, a place where rivers sing as they flow, and the sky wraps around you like a soft blanket of blue. That's what the Garden of Eden was like, only more beautiful than anything we've ever seen. This was the place where God placed Adam and Eve, a paradise made with love. The trees stretched tall, their leaves dancing in the breeze. Flowers bloomed in every color, red like ripe apples, gold like sunshine, and purple like the edge of dusk. Their sweet scent filled the air. The ground was soft and warm, and the streams that ran through the garden were clear and cool, gentle enough to drink from, and quiet enough to lull the soul to rest. In the very heart of the garden stood two trees. One was the tree of life, glowing with a quiet mystery. The other was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, set apart. Its fruit was beautiful, round and bright, but that tree had been marked by God Himself. You must not eat from this tree, He had said. If you do, you will surely die. But the rest of Eden was open and free. Adam and Eve could go where they pleased, eat what they wanted, and enjoy the beauty around them. Nothing hurt, nothing broke. Everything sang of peace. In the mornings, golden sunlight filtered through the leaves. Dewdrops sparkled like tiny stars on the petals. The animals, deer, birds, even lions, gathered around Adam and Eve without fear. Everything trusted them. Adam would tend the garden, pulling weeds, though there were very few, and naming animals. You shall be called lion, he might say, or you with your long ears will be rabbit. Eve would walk beside him, her laughter gentle as wind through trees. She helped care for the garden too, sometimes picking fruit, sometimes splashing her feet in the river, smiling up at the sky. And in the cool of the day, when shadows grew long and the light turned soft, God would walk with them. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine hearing His footsteps, steady and kind, like a warm heartbeat in the stillness. God would speak to them, not with thunder or lightning, but like a father speaks to his children, with delight, with love, with closeness. They never feared him. Why would they? There was nothing to fear. Their hearts were whole. Their minds were clear. Their love was pure. There were no lies, no anger, no shame. Adam and Eve were naked, but they didn't feel embarrassed. They didn't even think about it. That's how pure everything was. There was no wrong, no hiding. They were exactly who they were created to be, and they were loved exactly as they were. Day after day, night after night, Eden remained a place of peace. Sometimes they would rest in the shade of a tree, watching the sky turn orange as the sun slipped away. Stars would begin to twinkle, and animals would settle down to sleep. Adam might lay his head on the soft grass and Eve beside him, and together they would whisper thanks to God for the beauty around them. They didn't worry about tomorrow. They didn't fear anything. They simply rested. And God watched over them like a gentle shepherd over his sheep, like a father over his children. But one day, something would change. In the shadows, just beyond the bright fruit trees, a whisper began. A whisper that did not come from God. It slithered low and smooth and quiet, so quiet you might think it was only the wind. But it wasn't. It was something else. Something that had once been good but had turned away from God. Something jealous. Something proud. Something that wanted to tear apart what God had made whole. That whisper would find its way to Eve. It would sound like a question. It would sound like curiosity. It would even sound like truth. But it would be a lie. Still, for now, in this chapter of their story, Adam and Eve were safe. The sky still sang. The garden still glowed. God still walked with them in the evening. They were surrounded by beauty and wrapped in love. Their hearts were light. Their days were full of joy. And somewhere above them, the stars watched quietly, waiting to see what choice they would make when the whisper finally came. But that's a story for another night. Close your eyes, dear one. Imagine the garden, the way the water flows, the way the trees dance. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a slow stream. Rest in the peace that Adam and Eve once knew, the same peace that God offers even now. Tomorrow, we will listen to the whisper in the garden and see where it leads. Good night. It was still early in the beginning of the world. The garden was quiet, bathed in morning light. Gentle winds brushed through the branches of trees. The birds were singing softly, just enough to stir the leaves, just enough to whisper praise to the one who made them. Adam stood in the middle of it all. The breath of God still lingered in his lungs. He was freshly made, full of life, and surrounded by wonders that were new and shimmering with purpose. Every flower opened just for him, every animal bowed with trust. And on that peaceful day, God came near, not with thunder, not with fire, just a still presence, strong, gentle, loving. Adam listened because the voice of God was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. And God said to him, "Adam, I have made all this for you. Every tree that grows in this garden, I made it for your joy. You may eat from any of them. Apples, figs, pomegranates, grapes, all of it is yours. Adam's heart must have swelled with gratitude. Imagine it, a world full of yes. But then God's voice became just a little quieter. Not harsh, not cold, just calm and clear. But there is one tree, Adam, only one. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Do not eat from it. Adam's eyes turned to the tree, standing tall in the center of the garden. Its fruit looked no different than the others, but there was something deep about it, something holy. God continued, "If you eat from that tree, you will surely die." There was no anger in God's words, only warning, only love. Like a parent gently saying, "This is not safe. Stay near me." The command was simple. One tree untouched. One boundary. Not to harm Adam, but to protect him. In a garden full of freedom, this was the only line. But why did God place such a tree there at all? Because real love must have a choice. If there were no wrong paths, then choosing the right one wouldn't mean anything. So God gave Adam a chance to trust, not just to enjoy Eden, but to choose God's wisdom above his own. And Adam listened. He understood. For a while the days passed softly. Adam roamed the garden free and joyful, the tree standing quietly in the center, like a reminder. Not a temptation, just a boundary, lovingly drawn. Then came Eve. Created from Adam's rib while he slept, she too was full of life. Her eyes opened to the beauty of the garden and the voice of God. She was not given a lesser role. She too was trusted with the same command. And so they lived together in the garden. One command, one boundary, one choice. They could walk among the trees, nap beside the rivers, talk with the animals, even walk beside God himself in the cool evenings. And all the while, the tree stood still, like a quiet promise. You are free, but I have given you a choice. Will you trust me? This command was never meant to trap them. It was meant to remind them of the one who made them, the one who knows all things, the one who loves them enough to say, "This far and no farther." Sometimes Adam would glance at the tree from across the garden. Maybe he'd pause and think, why not that one? But then perhaps he remembered the voice of God, soft but firm. You may eat from every other tree, but not that one. It was a question of trust. Would they believe that God knew what was best? Would they believe that his boundaries were not to steal joy, but to keep them whole? That question floated like mist in the garden air, and the tree stood still, fruit glowing in the sunlight, untouched. Even the animals kept their distance. Even the birds never perched on its branches. It was as if all of Eden remembered the command, and for a while, all was well. But far off in the shadows, something else had noticed the tree too. Something that did not love, something that did not trust, something that had once stood in the presence of God, but had chosen pride instead. That something was waiting, watching, planning to whisper. It knew it could not force, but it could twist words. It could turn curiosity into doubt. But for now, the sun dipped low in the garden, golden and kind. Adam and Eve lay on the soft earth, hand in hand at peace. They had not yet chosen wrong. The world had not yet broken, and the tree stood still. So rest now, little one. Let your breath rise and fall like the wind in Eden's trees. Let your thoughts settle like petals in the river. You are safe, and you are seen, just as Adam and Eve were, watched over by the same loving God who still speaks in whispers and still draws us gently toward what is good. Sleep well, and tomorrow we'll meet the whisper. The garden was still beautiful. The sun still rose each morning in a golden hush. The river still sang its song. Trees still danced in the breeze. Birds still filled the air with gentle music. And Adam and Eve were still free, still joyful, still walking hand in hand beneath the bright green canopy of Eden. But one day, the air felt different. Not colder, not louder, just different. Hidden among the trees, beneath the leaves and vines, something watched. It slithered low, its movements smooth and quiet, like silk across stone. It was the serpent. Now, this was no ordinary creature. The serpent was clever, more so than all the wild animals God had made, but deep inside it lived a spirit that did not love what was good, a spirit that did not trust God, a spirit that wanted to twist the truth. And so it came close. It waited near the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and watched as Eve walked by, her footsteps light and curious. She wasn't afraid. Why would she be? The garden had always been a place of peace. The serpent's voice, when it finally spoke, was soft and smooth. It was not frightening. It was not loud. It was simply sly. Did God really say, the serpent asked, his eyes fixed on Eve, that you must not eat from any tree in the garden? Eve paused, her brow furrowed just a little. She looked at the tree, then at the serpent. No, she said gently. We may eat from the trees in the garden, but God said we must not eat from the tree in the middle of the garden, or touch it, or we will die. The serpent's eyes glimmered like a trick of light in water. You will not surely die, he said. And just like that, the first lie crept into creation. The serpent leaned closer, his words sweet as honey, but sharp underneath. God knows that when you eat from that tree, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Eve looked again at the tree. It had always been beautiful, but now it seemed different, not just pretty, but desirable. She thought about what the serpent said, you will be like God. She had never wanted power. She had only wanted to walk with him. But now, maybe it was good to know more. Maybe God was holding something back. Something had changed, not just around them, but inside them. They didn't feel brave anymore, or safe, or free. They felt afraid. Then came the sound. Footsteps. God was walking in the garden, his presence still gentle, still kind. But to Adam and Eve it now felt different, not like comfort, but like fear. So they hid. Among the trees they once danced beneath, they now crouched in silence, hoping not to be seen. But God called out, his voice still full of care. Adam, where are you? Adam peeked out from behind the leaves. His voice trembled. I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, so I hid. And God asked, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from? Adam shifted uncomfortably. He looked at Eve. The woman you put here with me, he said. She gave me the fruit, and I ate. God turned to Eve, and Eve, her eyes wide with guilt, said, "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." It was true, but the truth could not undo what had been done. Sin had entered the world, not with a scream, but with a whisper, and everything would be different now. But that part of the story we'll save for tomorrow night. For now, let your eyes close slowly, let your heart be quiet, like the garden in the stillness before the fall. Even when we choose wrongly, even when we hide, God still comes walking. He still calls gently, "Where are you?" And he still wants us near. Sleep in peace, little one. Tomorrow, we will listen to the voice of God again and hear what he says to his beloved children. Good night. The garden, once bright and full of laughter, had grown quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of evening rest, but a stillness that made the trees seem taller and the shadows seem longer. Adam and Eve were no longer running freely across the grass or splashing in the clear rivers. They were hiding among the same trees that once made them feel safe, hiding from the one who had made them because they were afraid. Because they had eaten the fruit, because they knew now what it meant to feel shame. And yet, even though they were hiding, God came to find them. He walked through the garden in the cool of the day, just as he always did. His footsteps were steady, gentle, like a father returning home at dusk. He called out into the stillness, "Adam, where are you?" Not because he didn't know, but because he was giving Adam a chance to speak, a chance to come out from the shadows. And Adam answered, "I heard you, and I was afraid, because I was naked, so I hid." God's voice was soft, but steady. "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from?" And Adam, torn by fear and shame, looked away and answered, "The woman you put here with me, she gave me the fruit, and I ate it." Then God turned to Eve and asked her gently, "What is this you have done?" Eve too looked down. Her voice was quiet. "The serpent deceived me, and I ate." There it was, the truth, the first sin. It didn't come with shouting or storm clouds. It didn't come with fire or fury. It came with a small choice that grew into a great sorrow. The trust had been broken. Closeness that once wrapped around them like sunlight had been torn. Not because God stopped loving them, but because sin had entered their hearts. And sin always puts space between us and the one who made us. God looked at the serpent first. His voice, now firm and full of purpose, said, "Because you have done this, you are cursed. You will crawl on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life." And then God spoke something that echoed across time. "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." A promise. One day someone would come, a child, a savior, who would crush the serpent's power. Even now, so soon after the fall, God was already whispering hope. Next, God turned to Eve. His heart ached with sorrow, but his words were true. "Because of what you have done, your life will change. Bringing children into the world will now come with pain, and your heart will ache for your husband, and you will not always walk side by side as easily as before. Then he turned to Adam. Because you listened instead of trusting my command, the ground is now cursed. You will work the soil and it will fight you. Thorns will grow, sweat will cover your brow, life will become hard, and one day you will return to the ground from which I made you. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. And so it was. Sin had brought a curse, not just on Adam and Eve, but on the whole world. The earth would groan, the animals would suffer, people would struggle, hearts would ache, all because of that one choice, that one bite, that one moment when trust was broken. But even then, God did not leave them alone. He looked at their trembling hands, trying to hide behind leaves. He saw their shame, their fear, and with gentle mercy he made clothes for them. Not leaves, but garments of soft skin, coverings that would protect them. A sacrifice had been made. Even in judgment, love remained. Then came the hardest part. God, who had made Eden for them, now had to send them out of it. He could not let them stay in the garden, not because he stopped loving them, but because sin cannot remain in paradise. So he led them to the edge, and outside the gate they walked, hand in hand, no longer in Eden, but not alone. And God stayed near. He placed mighty angels, cherubim, at the entrance of the garden, with a flaming sword flashing back and forth, guarding the way to the tree of life. Adam and Eve did not look back. The garden behind them faded into memory. The road ahead was unknown, but still they had each other, and still God's promise echoed quietly in their hearts. One day the serpent would be crushed. One day the story would be made right. One day there would be redemption. But for now, the first sin had changed everything. And yet, God's love remained. Now, dear one, it is time to rest. Let the story settle like dust returning to the earth. Let your heart be still, even as Adam and Eve stepped quietly into a new world. Though the garden is closed for now, the promise remains open. God still seeks, God still clothes, God still loves. Sleep gently beneath his watchful eye, and tomorrow we'll follow Adam and Eve beyond the garden to life outside paradise. Good night. The sun rose, just as it always had. Golden light stretched across the earth, casting soft shadows on the ground. But this time, Adam and Eve were not waking up beneath the tall trees of Eden. They were no longer lying in fields where flowers bloomed forever, where rivers whispered peace, and God's footsteps echoed through the evening. No, they were outside now, outside of the garden, outside of paradise, and behind them, standing tall and fierce at the entrance of Eden, were two mighty angels, cherubim. their wings stretched wide, and between them a flaming sword flickered and flashed, guarding the way back to the tree of life. Adam turned and looked once, just once. Eden glowed in the distance, like a dream half remembered, like a memory you want to hold on to, but can't quite reach. But he knew they could never go back. God had sent them out, not with hatred, but with sorrow. He still loved them. He always would. But sin had changed the world. And now, Adam and Eve would learn what it meant to live outside the garden. The ground here was different. It was harder, rockier. The grass didn't grow as easily. Thorns poked through the soil. The wind carried dust instead of the scent of sweet blossoms. They would have to learn to plant, to dig, to sweat, to wait for the rain. Work would no longer be easy. It would be a part of life. Still, they had each other. They held hands as they walked, their garments of skin soft but strange, a quiet reminder that something had been lost. And yet, beneath the grief, a small warmth remained. Because God had not left them, He still watched over them, He still spoke, though not in the same gentle walks through Eden. Now His voice would come in different ways, in the quiet of prayer, in the whisper of wind, in the stillness of a starry night. Adam would till the soil. He would bend down in the hot sun, planting seeds, his hands callous and dirty, but each time a plant grew, each time a vine reached towards the sky, he would remember. Eden, the garden, the beginning, and Eve, she would carry life. In her womb she would bear the future, but it would not be easy. There would be pain, tears. Yet every time she felt the flutter of new life within her, her heart would stir with the memory of God's promise. One day, a child would come, one who would crush the serpent's head. That hope would live in her, even as she lived outside the gates. Days passed, then weeks, then years. They built a simple home. They made fire. They learned the ways of the animals beyond Eden. Life was different now, harder, slower, but not without beauty. The stars still sang, the wind still moved. And when Adam looked at Eve, he still saw the gift that God had given him in the garden. One night, as they sat beside a fire, Eve laid her head against Adam's shoulder. "Do you think," she whispered, "that God still walks in the garden?" Adam was quiet for a while. Then he answered, "I think He walks wherever we are, even if we can't see Him." And Eve smiled softly. Outside of paradise, there was pain. There was labor. There were aching hearts and tired hands. But there was also love. There was also faith, and there was always. The days outside the garden were long. The soil was no longer soft underfoot. It resisted the work of Adam's hands. The sun was hotter. The air was drier. And the once peaceful ground now grew weeds and thorns. But even in this harder place, Adam and Eve kept going. They made a home of stones and wood, nestled near a stream that sang a quieter song than Eden's rivers. They worked together, planting, building, learning. They didn't have everything, but they had enough. And more than anything, they had each other. Then one morning, something new stirred in Eve's body. A flutter, a rhythm, a mystery. something growing where nothing had grown before, and she knew life was forming inside her. Her heart pounded with awe. Her hand rested gently on her belly, and her eyes filled with tears. This was the first time any human being had ever carried a child. She did not know what to expect, but she remembered the words of God, that she would bring life into the world. And so the days passed, slowly and softly. Adam cared for her, watched over her. At night they would sit by the fire and wonder what their child would look like. Would he walk with strength? Would he laugh like Eve? Would he remember the story of the garden? Then, one night under a quiet sky, the baby came. There was pain just as God had said. Eve cried out, a voice rising through the stillness. Adam held her hand, his face full of fear and awe. And then, after hours of labor, there was a cry. A tiny sound, new, bright, alive. A boy. Eve held him close to her chest and her tears fell onto his soft skin. She looked into his eyes that had never seen a garden, never known a world without thorns, and she smiled. I have brought forth a man, she whispered, with the help of the Lord. And they named him Cain. He was the first child born into a world of dust and labor, the first to know only life outside the garden. But he was also the first echo of the promise. Eve wondered, just for a moment, could he be the one God had spoken of, the one who would crush the serpent and restore what was lost? Time passed. Cain grew strong and tall. He helped Adam in the fields, learning how to plant seeds and dig deep into the stubborn earth. He watched the seasons come and go. He laughed. He ran. He asked questions. And before long another baby came, another boy. This one gentler, quieter. His eyes sparkled when he watched the sheep in the fields. His heart was soft, his voice calm. They named him Abel. The two brothers grew together side by side. They played beneath the trees and chased each other through the wild grass. But as they grew, their hearts grew different. Cain loved the soil. He worked the land, planting crops and gathering food. He took pride in what his hands could build and grow. Abel loved the animals. He cared for the sheep, led them to water, protected them from harm. He spoke to them gently and listened to the quiet things of the world. Adam and Eve watched their sons with both joy and worry. They were thankful for the life they had been given, but they never forgot the garden, and they never forgot God. Even outside of Eden, they still worshipped, still brought their offerings, still whispered prayers into the sky. One day the two brothers brought their gifts to the Lord. He was the first child born into a world of dust and labor, the first to know only life outside the garden. But he was also the first echo of the promise. Eve wondered, just for a moment, could he be the one God had spoken of, the one who would crush the serpent and restore what was lost? Time passed. Cain grew strong and tall. He helped Adam in the fields, learning how to plant seeds and dig deep into the stubborn earth. He watched the seasons come and go. He laughed. He ran. He asked questions. And before long another baby came, another boy. This one gentler, quieter. His eyes sparkled when he watched the sheep in the fields. His heart was soft, his voice calm. They named him Abel. The two brothers grew together side by side. They played beneath the trees and chased each other through the wild grass. But as they grew, their hearts grew different. Cain loved the soil. He worked the land, planting crops and gathering food. He took pride in what his hands could build and grow. Abel loved the animals. He cared for the sheep, led them to water, protected them from harm. He spoke to them gently and listened to the quiet things of the world. Adam and Eve watched their sons with both joy and worry. They were thankful for the life they had been given, but they never forgot the garden, and they never forgot God. Even outside of Eden, they still worshipped, still brought their offerings, still whispered prayers into the sky. One day the two brothers brought their gifts to the Lord. Cain brought fruits from the field, grains and vegetables, the work of his own hands. Abel brought the best of his flock, a young lamb, perfect and spotless. God looked with favor on Abel's offering. His heart was right, and his gift came with humility and love. But Cain's offering, God did not accept it in the same way. It wasn't because Cain's gift was from the ground. It was something deeper. Cain's heart had grown proud. He had brought the gift, but without the trust, without the thankfulness. And when God did not look on his offering with joy, Cain grew angry. He clenched his fists. His heart burned, not just with sadness, but with jealousy, with bitterness. God, always loving, always watching, came to Cain in that moment. He spoke softly, like a father to his son. Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But be careful, Cain. Sin is crouching at your door. It wants to have you, but you must rule over it. It was a warning, a gentle one, a lifeline. But Cain's heart had begun to close. He would not listen. He would make a choice. But that part of the story must wait until tomorrow. Tonight, rest in the quiet of this early world. A family walks through sorrow, but also through hope. The stars still shine. The fire still glows, and the God who made Eden still walks with his children, even beyond the gates. So close your eyes, little one. The garden may be far away, but the one who made it is still near. Sleep in peace, and tomorrow we'll walk beside the brothers, Cain and Abel, and hear what happens when jealousy grows too strong. Good night. The sun rose gently over the hills. Birdsong echoed through the trees. The wind carried the smell of warm earth and soft grass. And in the fields, two brothers moved about their morning work. Cain, the elder, strong and sure, was walking through his crops. He checked the rows of grain, his hands brushing over the green stalks. The soil was hard some days, but Cain was proud. He had worked it himself. He had planted, watered, and harvested. It was his effort, his strength, his sweat. Abel, the younger, was already among his sheep. He loved the quiet rhythm of their world. Wool brushing against wool, hooves tapping the earth, lambs bleating softly as he led them to graze in the pasture. He wasn't strong like Cain, but his heart was tender. He noticed the small things. He had a gift for care. Their parents, Adam and Eve, had taught them about God. They had told them about Eden, about the days when they walked beside the Lord, when the world was still whole and unbroken. And though the boys had never seen the garden, they believed. They knew there was a Creator, one who watched over them, one who still deserved their honor. And so, one day, the two brothers decided to bring offerings to the Lord, not because they had to, but because it was time to worship. Cain gathered the best of his harvest, the fruits and vegetables he had grown with his own hands. He piled them neatly. Their colors were rich, their skins smooth. He had worked hard for these, and he wanted God to see what he had done. Abel too prepared a gift. He chose carefully from his flock, not just any sheep, but the firstborn, the very best, perfect and unblemished. He wrapped the lamb gently, like it was something sacred. His heart beat quietly, not with pride, but with devotion. They each came before the Lord. We do not know what the altar looked like, or where it stood, only that God was there listening, watching, waiting. Cain's offering was laid down first, then Abel's, and then a moment of stillness. The wind hushed, the earth quieted. The air grew full of something unseen, something holy, and God looked with favor on Abel's offering. There was no thunder, no voice from the sky, but somehow, in a way only they could sense, they knew. God accepted Abel's gift, his heart, his humility, his trust. It pleased the Lord. But Cain's offering, God did not look on it with the same favor, not because it was fruit, but because of what lived in Cain's heart. He had brought his gift, yes, but it had not come from love, not from trust. It had come from pride, from the desire to prove himself. And God, who sees not just the hands but the heart, knew. When Cain saw this, when he saw that his offering was not accepted, his heart darkened, his shoulders slumped, his jaw tightened, his eyes burned with anger. He turned away not just from Abel, but from God. And again, just as he had done in the garden, God came near. He spoke to Cain, not with harshness, but with warning. A quiet voice reaching out. Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But be careful, Cain. Sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. The words hovered in the air like sunlight through clouds. Cain heard them. He understood them. But deep inside, his heart did not soften. He looked at Abel, his younger brother, the shepherd, the quiet one, the one whose offering God had favored, and instead of turning his heart to the Lord in humility, Cain let anger grow. Jealousy, like a vine, began to wrap around his thoughts. Bitterness, like a stone, settled in his chest, and he began to plan. That night, under the stars, Cain could not sleep. He stared at the sky, fists clenched, his heart pounding. He felt wronged, rejected, humiliated. Instead of asking God to help him do better, instead of speaking honestly with Abel, he let silence harden into hate. And so the ground waited, the same ground that had once bloomed in Eden, the same ground now marked by thorns. It waited, because something was coming. But that is a story for tomorrow. Tonight, rest gently in this part of the tale. Remember, God does not look only at what we give, but at why we give it. He does not measure our offerings by their size or strength, but by the heart behind them. Cain was given a choice. Just like Adam, just like Eve, and you too will always have a choice. So rest now, little one. Let your thoughts be soft, your spirit open, and your heart tender. The God who warned Cain still whispers to us all, be careful. Sin is crouching, but you are stronger with me. Sleep in that truth. Tomorrow, we'll walk with the brothers into the fields and witness what happens when jealousy is not put to rest. Good night. The earth was quiet. The sky stretched wide and blue, and the morning sun rose like a gentle promise. The sheep grazed calmly in the fields. Crops swayed with the breeze. But in Cain's heart, there was no peace. Jealousy had taken root. It didn't shout. It didn't rage. It simply sat there, growing in the silence, wrapping itself around his thoughts like dark vines. He could not forget the moment when Abel's offering was accepted and his was not. He could not forget how his younger brother had looked, calm, thankful, close to God. Cain's mind twisted that memory until it stung like a thorn. Why him? Why not me? Why should he be favored? He couldn't see the truth anymore. Not clearly. His heart was fogged with bitterness. But God had already come to him, already warned him. Be careful, the Lord had said. Sin is crouching at your door. And still, Cain had a choice. But he didn't turn to God. He turned to Abel. Come with me, Cain said one day. His voice was even. His face was unreadable. Abel didn't hesitate. He followed. The two brothers walked out to the fields, far from the tent, far from their parents, far from the place where offerings had once been laid. The grass was high. The wind had stilled. Abel looked up at his older brother, unaware, trusting, the way brothers should trust. But Cain's heart was heavy. And in a moment, quiet, quick, and full of sorrow, he struck his brother down. The world held its breath. No one had ever died before. Abel's eyes closed, and he fell to the ground. The earth, which once drank from the waters of Eden, now drank his blood. Cain stood still. There was no triumph, no relief, only silence. A silence louder than any scream. Then the voice came, not in thunder, not in anger, but in that same still voice that had walked with Adam and Eve in the garden. Cain, where is your brother? Cain turned. His hands trembled, but still his heart was hard. I don't know, he said. Am I my brother's keeper? And God's voice, now you are under a curse. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. Cain's face fell. His anger was gone now. Only fear remained. My punishment is more than I can bear, he said. I will be hidden from you, and whoever finds me may try to kill me. But God, even now, did not forget mercy. He placed a mark on Cain, a sign of protection, so that no one would harm him. A strange, gentle mercy in the middle of sorrow. And so, Cain went away from his home, away from his parents, away from the land he had worked with his hands. He walked into the east, into a place called Nod, and became a wanderer. Behind him, the world was changed. Adam and Eve wept. Their firstborn had become a murderer. Their second son, gentle, faithful Abel, was gone. The ache was deeper than words. And yet, life did not end.